This is the Between Mask of the Tiger. I don't remember the number, but this is the start of the Mastermind Threat. So, actually, before we get any further, I want to check in about something to make sure I have it right because it's been a while since we talked about it. But Mags, if you could remind me, what was the coven originally trying to do before they became a servant of Theodora? Like, what was the ritual they were trying to complete?
They were trying to thin the veil between this world and the next, so everybody could see ghosts and history,
That's right.
including
Okay.
because yeah,
Yeah.
the point is that the coven leader has no natural ability to do that, and so this is
Right.
for everyone's on the same playing field.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, I like it. That I think that works pretty well with what I've been planning for this. So, okay. Um, yeah, the mastermind threat. So I do want to say a couple of rules things before we begin. First, this threat will probably take 2 sessions. It will not be subject to the day-night phase cycle, and it will not take place in London. So those are some changes and differences there. There will be a dawn phase, but not until the whole thing is done. So today we probably won't have a dawn phase or like, experience point collection. It'll happen at the end of the entire thing. And as almost a sort of like out of character consideration, I know that several of the characters are pretty close to retirement in various ways. And so if you want to play towards that, you should definitely do it. Even if you manage to hit your retirement thing like before we're done, I'll still let you continue playing the character, but just by the end of it, the character has to be retired in some way, right? So don't think that like, oh, if I do it too early, I have to sit out. Like, no, this is just going to determine your ultimate end as a character, essentially, right? But we'll still finish the threat. You can still do the vulnerable move, even though there are not like you're not going to be in London. You'll just have to kind of think of like maybe slightly different creative ways of getting vices in there in the context that we'll be doing things. And the day-night move will be determined by the literal time of day in the scene. So those are just some things to be aware of. Also, you will no longer be able to collect mastermind clues. There's no longer such a thing to collect. And I think that's about it. If I think of any other rules considerations, I'll mention them. But I think I
Uh,
want to. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
just a question because a lot of my moves relate to the day-night cycle.
They won't have any valence in this. Yeah.
I
So,
kind of
yeah.
figured.
That's just a unfortunate consequence of the way that I have this one set up. So, I don't think it's going to matter too much, though. You should be fine. Let's talk about what's going on here. Now, Robin, the last time we saw you made a deal with Hazel Beaumont. Remind us what the fundamental nature of that deal was.
It was mainly let us send you victims to Spider Fi, and in return, you do me a little favor and use your spiders to get me back to the throne where Titania is.
Good. Now, I think a number of weeks have passed. And given the amount of time that's passed, I think that no one's condition is really clear because there's they're all conditions that are either permanent or would not have cleared just by time. And so the way we kick off here, Hargrave House, meaning the three of you, well, the two of you plus Bernright, have been invited to Brathwaite Hall, which is depicted kind of behind me. I don't know if this is what Brathwaite Hall looks like, but it's an English manor. So Brathwaite Hall is about 15 miles outside of London in the country. It is the home of Theodora Brathwaite. And these invitations have gone out to lots of different people, to lords and ladies, to merchants, to men and women of industry, even some royals. This is to be a weekend-long celebration. It is being pitched as a celebration for a renewed Britain. And it's a strange thing, but most people like the idea of a weekend of parties and hunting and other English country manor activities that's not on their dime. Why you all would have been invited is not as clear. But we find you all in a carriage that you've hired to take you to Brathwaite Hall. You have packed trunks, so you have access to personal quarters things that you might have packed. And you're sharing a carriage with Hazel Beaumont. Hazel Beaumont is in her typical, like, kind of multi-layered, gauzy fabrics, right? And so being so close to her and in such proximity to her, you'll see now that she also wears lots of like spider motif jewelry and things like that, right? And for those of you who are particularly sensitive to peering beyond the veil, you might even occasionally see flashes of Hazel in her true form, which is of a spider-headed humanoid, giant mandibles and glistening eyes. But for most of the trip, she just appears as Hazel Beaumont to you. And she says, I think you need to have some historical context for what is about to happen this weekend. There are matters, ancient matters that even you might not be aware of, Mr. Goodfellow, being a young failing that you are. Centuries ago, the kings and queens of Great Britain cemented their power by making pacts with the Fey realm. Some, such as our beloved Queen Titania, would say that they stole Fey power. But in any case, it is Fey magic that protects the crown and has protected the crown for centuries. I don't believe that our current monarch is even aware of this, but nevertheless she benefits from it. Theodora Brathwaite, of course, has deep and intimate ties with Queen Victoria. There is the matter, of course, of their initial meeting when Queen Victoria interceded to save the pirate queen of Barbuda from the hangman's noose. But the relationship continued for years thereafter. Some suggest it was a relationship of a very intimate nature. But importantly, they had a falling out. The reasons are not important, but it is well known that Theodora Brathwaite intends to destroy the crown. But of course she can't, because the magic that protects the throne is too powerful. And so she needs magic that is equal or more powerful than Fey magic in order to destroy the throne, to destroy the crown, indeed to destroy Great Britain. But my history lesson is not finished. As you know, early in the 1st century, the Romans made England into a province. And the Romans were quite a practical people. They didn't have much use or need for some of the more esoteric traditions that they had co-opted from the Greeks. In particular, Greek sorceries and magic cults dedicated to various gods and goddesses of magic didn't find much purchase in Roman society. And so those cults traveled to the furthest parts of the empire to find people who might be more amenable to such thought and practice. And they found allies in the pagan British Isles. And so you might be wondering, what does this all have to do with you? Well, it has come to my attention that Theodora Brathwaite, using the magic of the Coven, which our dear Ms. Sand used to be connected to, she intends to not only rediscover ancient pagan magics, but indeed to make herself a living vessel of the goddess Hecate. She will be Hecate reborn, and then she will use her power to not only destroy Queen Victoria, but indeed to destabilize the realm, and who knows what else. Now, why has she invited us all here? Well, perhaps she just likes to put on a show. Perhaps she wants witnesses to her transfiguration. Perhaps we are all part of whatever ritual is to be planned and executed. Irrespective of your feelings about the crown, you can't possibly want someone like Theodora Brathwaite to have such power, and indeed the Coven to have such power. And so I tell you that it is on you, if no one else, to determine how and when and where the ritual will be performed this weekend at Brathwaite Hall. Once you have those details, you can, well, stop them. Class dismissed.
I believe we're overlooking the most important question, my dear. They'll be absent at this party, correct?
Oh, say that again, Sasha.
There'll be absinthe at this party, correct?
She says, I have a feeling that Theodora Brathwaite keeps a very, very well-stocked bar, Mr. Goodfellow.
Wonderful.
The carriage joins a line with other carriages arriving at Brathwaite Hall. It's a little late in the afternoon, and the servants that attend to your baggage indicate that you will all be expected at dinner this evening, but that once you've settled into your rooms, you are free to go about the grounds as you wish and enjoy space and hospitality of Theodora Brathwaite. Until then. Out of character, this threat has a complexity of 6. The question is, what is the nature of the ritual? And it unlocks the opportunity to put a stop to it. And in particular, the how and the where and the when of the ritual are the most important details. And so with all of that said, as you're all stepping out of the carriage, you see various lords and ladies. Mr. Goodfellow, you will see the man in the sun mask looking out a window on the 2nd floor at you. And then he withdraws from the window. Ms. Sand, you don't see any of the Coven, but you can sense their presence here. They will be almost certainly in the background doing security duty.
Yeah, I think that I am constantly fidgeting with the small blade that I keep at my waist.
Yeah. So we have to determine at this point what everybody wants to do. I'll give you the basic lay of the land. The manor house has all sorts of spaces and things, and you have mostly free reign of the place. The upper floors are for essentially living space, and then the bottom floor is parlors, salons, that kind of thing. The house almost certainly has some sort of basement and attic spaces as well, but how to entrance those is not immediately clear, but you can see them, or you can see the attics at least. And presumably there are sub-levels also. The grounds are quite large, actually. And there is in particular, a quite large lake with an island in the middle of the lake, a little tiny island. But there are otherwise just forests and space for hunting and things like that. So, and there are 4 gardens, one in each of the cardinal directions around the house. And so, Mr. Goodfellow, what do you do upon arrival?
I would like to get a drink.
That can be done. Burn right?
I definitely would like to roam about the house looking for more servants' places, such as where's the kitchen at, where is the servants' quarters, that sort of thing, just to see like the bones of the house, as it were.
I think that makes sense. Ms. Sand?
I think I am going to wander the grounds looking for I think places where the spirits are thickest.
Oh, you're muted, Jason.
Sorry. Okay, I responded to Ms. Sand. I said interesting. And then I said, let's start with Mr. Goodfellow. So, Mr. Goodfellow, most of the other arrivals and some of the servants that are around are dealing with the arrivals. Everyone's just kind of going to their rooms and kind of getting settled. No one is really like kind of settled in for relaxing and drinking yet. And nevertheless, there is a lounge, and it is quite a wide open space. It's done up in Theodora's signature color. Everything is very, very sapphire blue. The curtains, the cushions, the couches, the pillows. And there is a bar cart, a little bar trolley in the room. And there is an old, ancient-looking butler at the bar trolley. So what do you do?
I go up to the bar cart. I don't even acknowledge the bartender. I just start picking stuff up and pouring it into glasses and downing it.
The old man will stop you before you get too far and say, "Sir, we have a proper way of doing things here at Brathwaite Hall. I must insist you take a seat, and I will bring you whichever drink you prefer."
Very well. I'll take absinthe.
Please let me show you to the most comfortable chair in the lounge. And he is leading you to the chair, but he walks really slowly. He's like kind of quivering a little bit, taking very like slow steps, just kind of following behind him. And finally, you're there at a chair, and he says, "Here, sir, please sit. What would you like to drink?"
Is there anything weird about this chair?
Just a blue wingback chair.
I sit down and I say, absinthe on the rocks. Can you drink absinthe on the rocks? I don't know.
I don't think so. I think you just pour it over sugar and that's it. But he will say, I will. I can certainly find something to satisfy you, sir.
Yes, and if you could pick it up with pace, I'd appreciate it. My throat is very dry after my journey.
He walks back to the bar cart. Still walking back to the bar cart.
May I ask you a question, sir?
Just one moment, sir. It's going to be a minute before he gets back to the bar cart. And so we'll pick up with Brathwaite. Brathwaite, you can find the kitchens, no problem. And indeed, there's a lot of activity of food being prepared and the head cook sort of like hollering at everyone and footmen and, footmen and various other people sort of dashing to and fro. And there are spaces where the servants that the guests would have brought with them are also kind of like settling in, which you can certainly be down there doing as well. What do you do?
I think I'm just trying to find like who's sort of like in charge of like the house.
Yeah.
Like,
So you've got two people. The head butler is Elmer, currently making his way to the bar cart, and then you've got, and then you have the only other person with any authority on the servant side is the cook, Mrs. Broadmoor, and so you will be expected just to sort of go settle into the servants' quarters at your own pace and leisure, but you can certainly go find Mrs. Broadmoor too.
yeah, I think I'll go find her.
You see her there. She's a kind of a tall, sort of pear-shaped woman, and she's hollering and yelling at various, cooks and things, and she's got a big cleaver. She's like punctuating her words with like slamming a cleaver into like a mutton chop, right? Kah, kah. What do you say?
Do be careful with that. You might accidentally cut something that you don't mean to cut through.
She turns and she says, I don't remember asking for anyone's advice or consultation in my kitchen.
Well, that's fair as well.
Who are you? Who do you work for?
Brathwaite. I work for Mr. Goodfellow of Hargrave House.
Fine, fine. Do you need help finding the valet's quarters, Miss Brathwaite?
Yes, I would. It's a pretty decently large manor house. Lots of twists and turns.
Well, fortunately, this one's really easy. You're going to step outside of the kitchen. You're going to make a left and go down the very far end of that hallway. Thank you. Good day. Could someone please bring me that tin of the yes, the salt there. Thank you. Chop, chop.
Oh man. Absolutely no nonsense.
Got a big dinner to make.
All right. Well, then I'll head down to the servants' quarters, following her directions. Maybe at least get something of that nature.
Very good. Mr. Goodfellow, Elmer is just about to the bar cart, and he's like, almost there. I used to drink absinthe in my youth in gay Paris. Have you ever been to Paris, Mr. Goodfellow?
Not for a couple of 100 years.
What a strange sense of humor. He arrives at the bar cart.
I must ask you, sir, what's your name again?
Please, sir, I must concentrate on the making of the drink. Miss Sand, you're on the grounds. How are you approaching sort of figuring out where the old and magical places are here?
I think one second. So I think I'm reluctant to spill my own blood right now because the coven is around, and I don't want to alert them to my presence right now. So I think I am doing this similarly to how anyone else would, right? I think right now, even though I know what I'm looking for, I am yeah, just mostly walking and looking for interesting artifacts or, you know, a folly, something that I would latch onto.
You can make a information move with, we'll just say reason for now. And I think you're probably, I don't think your conditions affect it necessarily for reason.
That is a 5.
5. Back at the bar trolley. Ah, there it is. Absinthe. We haven't cracked this bottle open yet, Mr. Goodfellow. You're in luck.
Yes, just bring the whole thing.
Oh, no. There is an order and a procedure to these things. And he cracks open the bottle. And you can hear him. You can't see him, but you can hear, like, you can't see what he's doing. You can hear him, you know, because his back is to you. But you can hear him kind of tinkling around the glasses and doing different things. And finally, he's done. He returns with some effort, and he has on a saucer a clear glass of green liquid with or just a clear glass with a spoon and a sugar cube on it, and then you have the absinthe in a tumbler to pour over it. And he says, "All right then. It's a bit of theater with this drink, eh?" And he begins making his way back over to where you're sitting. So Burnright, what do you do now?
Well, since most of the house is busy with preparing for, well, guests, the meal, making sure everyone's situated, I suppose there's not a lot of activity in here. So I'm looking through more personal belongings of the servants, seeing what sorts of grievances there has been against the house, or what sorts of excitement has been like lately, such as like, ooh, there's new people here.
I think I want the information move with composure, since you're kind of sneaking around to do this.
Mhm.
And yeah, go ahead and make it with composure.
That is an 11.
An 11. Okay, we'll come back to that. Miss Sand, with your missed die roll. There's no way that Hargrave House would have been invited by Theodora and the coven not know. You start to feel an itching sensation around your cuticles. On both of your hands. you can see the flesh on your cuticle of your index finger peeling back of its own accord. And you can start to see the nail carefully extracting itself from the flesh. There is a slight, sickly, ripping sound as the nail of your index finger tears from the flesh and drops onto the grass, leaving your finger bloody and bleeding. It's not necessarily extremely painful. It stings for sure, but it's not, debilitating pain or anything. But you can tell they're not done. What do? You can tell that they're working magic on you.
Well, I'm bleeding now, which, was the thing. That I was postponing. So I think I am going to write some salt and smoke this. I would like to banish their magic from my presence, right? I would like to put up a wall protecting myself from their magic.
I love it. Go ahead and roll with sensitivity. But I think because of the black veil, I'm going to put your disadvantage.
Well,
Oh, that disadvantage too. Wow, that's
Yeah.
great.
well, yeah. 2 5s and a 4, so 12.
Very good. Well, actually, this matters because if you don't have the cosmic passage even marked, so never mind. Doesn't actually matter. You succeed. Go ahead and describe the ritual. How do you protect yourself from their magic out here?
I think using my finger, I sketch. They're not runes. They're an old alphabet that was. I would say that they're more old Celtic alphabets and knots. And yeah, as I sketch with my bleeding finger, there's just a thin line of blood that hangs in the air, and the itching subsides. And I think I can hear in the distance like a frustrated groan, right? I don't think, yeah. I don't think that I hurt them because I was just like, meh, but yeah.
Yeah, and that's good.
Still frustration.
Good. We'll come back to that. Mr. Goodfellow, Elmer finally arrives with your absinthe and sets it down in front of you. Says, there we are. So tell me, Mr. Goodfellow, how do you know my mistress, Ms. Brathwaite?
We've had some dealings.
Oh, yes. She's a very busy woman in that way. Imports and exports and...
Dark magic.
Oh, Mr. Goodfellow. He puts his finger up to his lips, a quavering finger, and says, we must not speak of such things, Mr. Goodfellow.
Indeed, sir. What is it like to work with such a illustrious personage?
I have worked for Ms. Brathwaite for many years. I came with Brathwaite Hall, in fact. when she purchased it all those years ago. I admire her very much. She is, well, she has big ideas for Britain, for the world, and I'm happy to play my small part in seeing those ideas through.
Indeed. At this point, I want to drink the whole glass and put it back in front of him before he can walk away.
Okay. You have been poisoned.
Damn it.
You're going to make the day move to resist the poison, but I think you have to tell me what you're afraid the poison does.
I'm afraid it's going to knock me unconscious so they can take me someplace else.
Very well. Please go ahead and make a vitality roll. That's a good stat for you, at least.
Yeah. Can I invoke the light of Apollo to somehow try to burn the poison out of me?
Yeah, I like that. That's good. Yeah.
Okay, that is 11 plus 3 is 14.
Very good. You get a bonus as well. The bonus is you can have Elmer at your mercy once you resist the poison. So once you realize you've been poisoned, what does that feel like? And then how do you counteract it?
I think I can feel, the darkness encroaching on the sides of my vision as I start to fall unconscious. And I think I have a brief flash of memory of the man in the sun mask watching me from the window. So I invoke the light of Apollo inside me to burn out the impurity, but I still make it look like I'm slumping down lower and lower in the chair, like I'm sleeping. And as Elmer gets up, his hands kind of reaching out to me, I open my eyes and grab him by the throat.
He says, "Oh, sir, I thought something was wrong. I'm so happy to see you're okay."
Indeed, but can the same be said of you, my dear?
I don't know what happened. Perhaps the liquor has gone off.
I pull him closer to me and stare him in the eyes. Where's Theodora? Tell me now, or I'll snap your neck.
Give me the information move with vitality.
All right. That is a 7.
Hmm. The complication is he's not going to give you a straight answer. You are going to get a clue because you're entitled to a clue, but he's not going to tell you exactly where Theodora is.
Okay, I'll take that.
We'll come back to that in a moment. And Bernard, I owe you a clue, correct? On a 10 plus, right?
Yep.
Good. I think the thing you notice most interestingly, perhaps, is you step into several of the servants' quarters that are for people who work at the house, right? And all of them to a person, or each room, has on the wall above each bed, there is a charcoal marking of a pair of snakes. That's your clue. And I haven't made a track. Oh, but it looks like someone did. So yeah, go ahead and just note that on the tracker there. And let's take 5. Mr. Goodfellow. Elmer is tearing up a little bit. crying as he says, I don't know where Mrs. Brathwaite is right now. But she is distant from me ever since those new colleagues of hers, those witches, came to Brathwaite Hall. I don't know what they're up to. I'm not allowed in to her confidences anymore. But I know where they go. Every night. I followed them once. They take little boats out to the island on the lake. Get up to all manner of pagan nonsense.
I do believe I didn't ask where they go. I asked where she is.
She will be at dinner tonight, sir. That is all you need to know.
I tighten my grip just a little bit and kind of enjoy the fear in his eyes before sighing and relinquishing my grip. And I'm just like, very well. Now pour me another glass and stop with this doddering old man nonsense. It's below both our dignities.
And he does indeed walk more quickly to the bar trolley to make you a second drink. Ms. Zond, once you have the coven off your back, out from under your fingernails, as it were, what do you do?
I think I am looking like I am trying to feel where my blood is pulling me, if that makes sense. This kind of like magnetic relationship between the dark entities and blood in general, my blood in specific. And so I imagine right now that I'm just in some manicured garden. No pun intended, I guess, but it worked. And so I would say, aside from my spiritual assault, it doesn't feel very spooky here. And so I am looking for a place that's just a little more wild.
Interesting. You will be led to... You'll be led to what is a family graveyard, a cemetery. It is wild in the sense that it is not well kept compared to the rest of the grounds. Things are growing over it. And it's not Theodora's family. It's whoever owned this place before her. A family called... What's the name? Oh. It's Crawley.
As in my pet, Mrs. Crowley.
Yes, and not as in Downton Abbey Crawley. But yes, the family is Crawley. The family name is Crawley. There are probably lots of Crawleys. There may not be any particular connection, but I bet there is. So,
yeah.
Also, if you'll recall, I think that wasn't there a relationship between Theodora and this?
Oh, Mrs. Crawley was Theodora's daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so she married into the family, but she interesting.
So what do you do?
Let me think on that for a little bit, actually.
Yeah, think on it. Mr. Goodfellow. No, we're going to burn right. You've seen a strange thing, some sort of markings or hex or something with the servants, this sort of snake markings. What do you do then? Oh, Burnright, that was for you. What do you do after you're done finding those markings?
Well, that's interesting. I suppose I return to the main hall, just seeing like what sorts of guests are here, like anybody is coming here, it seems like. And that is just kind of a little bit on the weird side because like even amongst like nobles, you still like have like cliques and whatnot. So I'm just trying to find like out the sort of relationship, like what do all these people have in common?
That's a very good question. You can be sort of keeping an eye, spending basically, I would imagine it's probably all the time up until the dinner, essentially,
Mhm.
figuring that out. Make an information move with reason.
That's a 4.
Oh, you, after a fair amount of just sort of paying attention to conversations, maybe talking to their servants that they brought with them, ladies' maids and things like that, you will find yourself in a hall, a narrow hall, poorly lit. And you realize you're not sure how you got here. And as you step out of the hall, it leads into another chamber that is almost like a crossroads between hallways. You don't remember passing through this part of the house. And there is something stalking you. You can sense it. It is like a tiger in the grass, stalking you from the shadows. Whatever's happening to you right now, you are being isolated and stalked by something. What do you do?
I keep my calm and I keep forward like at a regular place. If I rush, this creature stalking me will probably try to strike out before I get away. And if I stop moving, that is a moment of weakness and it will also strike. So keep moving forward because even at a crossroads, a decision has to be made. And once it gets made, my situation will get changed.
Let's make the day move. What are you afraid is going to happen if you lose your nerve?
Well, whatever's coming out to like get me will reveal itself, and I'm not gonna like that.
Very good. Go ahead and roll with composure.
That's a lot better. These are very bouncy dice today. It's an 11.
Very good.
Only composure.
You manage to find your way, keep your nerve, and find your way back to the part of the house you're supposed to be in. where you're at right now, you can't hear the guests anymore, and it's poorly lit, but you managed to find your way back to where guests are at. But just give me the scene as you're sort of like navigating and enduring this.
I think the halls twist and like there's corridors and like I have to make decisions and there's no real sign of like where I'm going. But eventually, like I imagine as I'm feeling my hand along the wall, the wallpaper actually starts to shift from like this sort of like black and white coloring to actual more tones of various blue before getting into a sapphire color.
Mr. Goodfellow, once you're done tormenting Elmer, what do you do?
I would like to seek out Miss Sand, tell her what I learned, that they're apparently doing these rituals on the island, and ask if she'd like to go with me on a little boat trip.
Yeah, I think that sounds good. We could put the two of you together if Miss San's okay with that. If there's something you want to do by yourself first, we can do that as well.
I think I'm content with knowing the location of this graveyard, because I may call on the spirits here at a future point.
Okay, sounds good. So let's put the two of you together, maybe like meeting in the garden. Take it away.
I must say the country becomes you, Miss Sand. That pale complexion, that dark Gothic look of yours. The contrast is so lovely.
I wish I could say that I liked it. Certainly, wow. Where there are trees, there are things hidden in them, right? And I wave my bloody hand.
You city folk are so nervous when you aren't enclosed by stone.
Do you know how many people die in London every day? And for those of us who communicate with the other side, how comforting that might be.
There's plenty of death out here as well. Can't you hear them? I think you kind of hear like a hawk or something soar overhead. There are a million little deaths happening in those woods every minute of the day.
Yes, little.
Well, speaking of hunting, I learned something very interesting about our hosts.
Yes, what would that be?
You see that little island on the horizon?
Yes.
Apparently they get up to pagan nonsense in the evening. And since you're an expert in such nonsense, I was wondering if you would like to accompany me on a little sightseeing expedition.
I would love to. I hope you have a boat arranged.
Not a swimmer, are we?
I would just like to know if you have ever tried swimming in skirts.
Very well. Elmer, get the boat.
Wait, is Elmer with you?
If that's okay.
Yeah, I think it won't be any trouble to get a boat out to the island. Good. Mr. Burnright, once you're back into civilized places in the house, I think the places you were in maybe don't even exist. It's unclear. What do you do?
I am, well, since I'm back in civilized places, it feels like the day is kind of winding down a little bit.
It will be dinner time soon. Yeah.
Yes, so I'm going to, well, just prepare, like, in terms of, like, making sure that our stuff has arrived in the right place and just preparing for dinner because hopefully Mr. Goodfellow will show up because I have no idea where he went.
Well, Mr. Goodfellow and Miss Sand are currently on a little boat going out to the island. And the island is quite small. I mean, like when I say small, it's like imagine what would we compare it to? Maybe like a small city park, like just very, quite tiny. But you can be rowing your way to the little island, just the two of you. And you pull the boat up to it. And at a glance, the island is fairly unremarkable. I'm sure there's more to see, but there are no structures. There are a couple of like quite old looking trees on the island, but otherwise it looks fairly unremarkable. Miss Sand, what do you do?
An unremarkable little island. I think I'm going to estimate the center of it and start digging. And I think if I don't find anything under the soil, I am at least going to dig something about the size of a grave. And then I will probably, yeah. I mean, I'm not experienced at manual labor. That's going to be pretty much my afternoon unless someone stops me.
Yeah, well, Mr. Goodfellow, what are you gonna do?
Robin doesn't like to get his like nice country clothes dirty, so he's just gonna wander around looking at the trees, try to find the oldest one, and see if there's anything unusual about it.
Yeah, make the information move with sensitivity.
All right.
All right. That is a 12 on the dot.
Wow, very good. You are looking around the island and you're seeing little bits of evidence that confirm Elmer's story. There are melted down candles in the grass, bits of leftover food, things of that nature. But perhaps most intriguing, there are two trees. The trees have each had their bark defaced. They have been marked. It looks a little bit like carving on the tree is maybe a paintbrush or possibly some kind of wand. But then you realize what you're really looking at is it's a torch, a long stake with fire on the end of it, carved into each tree. That's your clue. Ms. Sand, you can make the information move with vitality, actually.
I can't believe I'm positive in that stuff. 11.
The dice are very kind right now.
Yes.
You managed to dig, and whatever drew you here, it was a good instinct. Because you get to the bottom of, you were digging a grave and you found a grave. there is a stone sarcophagus or burial vessel down there. What do you do?
There is a stone sarcophagus at the bottom of this grave. I guess I want to know, how worked is this stone sarcophagus? Is it carved elaborately or is it plain?
I will give you the clue.
Okay.
The sarcophagus is marked with sigils that you will recognize as both Celtic and Latin.
Mm.
But that's the clue. And it will be time for dinner soon. Miss Sand, you can stay out on the island. Mr. Goodfellow, you can stay out on the island if you wish. No one's going to mark your absence. But you were instructed to be back in the dining hall at sundown, and we are there. What do you do?
I will go to dinner.
Robin will as well.
Miss Sand, are you going to change beforehand? Because you are presumably covered in dirt.
Yeah, I will change for dinner.
Yeah. Even though it was a fairly shallow grave, you still are probably pretty dirty. I think by the time the two of you get back, Brathwaite Hall is all sort of like humming with festivity, right? People are in their evening clothes. They're probably looking at the two of you, especially Masand, a little funny as you go back to your rooms. Mr. Goodfellow, you will see the man in the sun mask standing on kind of a higher balcony space, looking down into the sort of like kind of ballroom where everyone is sort of gathered before dinner. He's wearing his sort of standard long gold dressing gown and his mask, and he will see you and he will give a deferential nod of his head to you. What do you do?
I'd like try and join him on the balcony.
Yeah, you can make your way up. And he says, "Ah, my lord. I thought that was you I saw earlier."
Yes, indeed. It's always nice to find a friend at such gatherings.
"I am honored that you consider me a friend, sir."
Oh, more than a friend. I consider you a close ally, if I may be so bold.
"Of course. I am your ally and servant. What do you think of Miss Brathwaite's hospitality?"
Much like the woman herself, it is overbearing and gauche.
"Well, not everyone has the same taste for the rustic that you do, Mr. Goodfellow."
What are your read on the festivities?
"I am here in anticipation of being reunited with a very, very old acquaintance of mine."
Indeed. And if someone were seeking to prevent such a reunion, would you consider them a friend or an enemy?
I know where you're going with this, Mr. Goodfellow. And I think at this point you can make the information move with presence.
Alrighty. Don't think I'm leveraging my appearance here, so I'll just roll 2. That is 10 on the dice, plus 3 is 13.
Very good. Miss Sand, you are in your room, there's a little kind of like cluster of rooms where Hargrave House has been set up. And you might even run into Burn right at that point. So I think I'd like to just put the two of you together.
Up to you, Brathwaite.
Hello, Miss Sand. How has your time been here lately? Seen anything unusual?
I have found a number of graves, one of which contained a stone sarcophagus. Anyway, I need a new dress.
Yes, it seems as though what you're wearing seems to be a little bit not right for dinner.
Yeah. It was a perfectly fine dress. And then I dug a grave.
Yes. If you follow me, our rooms are towards this way.
Excellent. Thank you. How has your afternoon been?
Interesting. It seems as though Brathwaite Hall is sort of falling into other places. What those places may be, I'm not quite sure, but they are not meant to be a place. If that makes sense.
That makes more sense than it should, quite frankly. The thing that is afoot here, well, I guess I don't know everything that's afoot here, but they are bringing together a number of powerful concepts and cultures. And so I think there are certainly those spaces coming near here, and perhaps new ones that are created by their confluence. So I understand, but also I wish I didn't.
It seems as though everything is getting put together into what's the word? Metal? Me as a person is forgetting the word, but you put it in like this little jar and then you crush it up.
Muddled,
yeah, okay. It's in this it's everything's getting put into this muddled and it's getting all crushed together. Something's bound to go terribly wrong if it continues this way.
I'm not sure. Yes, we are definitely in the crucible now. And I hope that we have enough in us to change the direction of the outcome.
Mr. Goodfellow, the man in the sun mask, says, I am somewhat indifferent to meeting this old colleague of mine, but I suspect I know that when they arrive, it will be by the light of the moon, and I will not be able to witness the event. I will be at the lowest ebb of whatever power I have managed to attain in this world.
Yes, well, if I get the chance, I'll be certain to give them your regards.
Mr. Goodfellow, I think it is probably very important that you do not let this happen.
And what could the consequences of such be?
I have a feeling this colleague of mine, irrespective of what Theodora wants, will have an incredible desire for revenge.
I can relate.
And he says, I won't be at dinner. I'll be in my room.
Well, I shall be miserable for lack of your company, but you have a lovely evening, my friend.
Yes. Stop back by in the morning.
Of course. Now, does this count about asking about other worlds for the purposes of our bonus from Limehouse Lurker?
Oh, yeah. What do you get for that bonus?
1 extra clue.
Oh, yeah, sure. So the clue is like it's going to happen by moonlight. That's the clue. And let me take a look at my notes. He says, before he goes, he turns back and says, the process will involve a gate, Mr. Goodfellow. A quite literal gate between worlds.
I saw no gate on the island.
Well, and he bids you good evening and turns.
Yeah, I think Goodfellow gets a little bit like puzzled expression on his face and goes down to join the dinner.
Indeed. Let's take a quick 5-minute break. We'll come back and we'll have this dinner scene. Dinner. There are in total, about 24 guests at the dinner. And everyone is in evening clothes in the great dining hall. As a paint scene for everyone, how is Theodora pulling out all the stops to make this dinner incredibly impressive to the people who are eating there?
I think she has a lot of like exotic, rare dishes from around the world, boiled puffins from the Galapagos Isles, that sort of thing.
For the more timid guests, because like boiled puffins, that's just weird. There's also dishes that are specifically made for each guest, like what their favorite meal is. There's just a lot of food.
I think the dishware has been explicitly commissioned for this event, right? So you have fresh porcelain plates and crystal goblets. And you can tell because they're all dated. And so the date is only a few days ago from whoever created them.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like it. Theodora is at the dinner. She is resplendent in a sort of blue organza gown with her trademark jewel. She's not done up in coven wear tonight. She looks more like you're used to seeing her before she got in with them. At one point, she calls across the table to you, Mr. Goodfellow. And she says, Mr. Goodfellow, I want to extend my apologies for my manservant's behavior toward you earlier today. He sometimes gets a little carried away.
Oh, I completely understand, darling. Good help is so hard to find these days. And I just glance quickly out of the corner of my eye at Burnright.
Burnright, you're not at the dinner itself, but you can be kind of waiting in the wings, right, with other servants and things and footmen and whatnot. Ms. Sand and Mr. Goodfellow, you're split up. There are other guests around you. And interestingly, you'll have noticed that everyone had like you had a name tent or a little name thing where you're supposed to be sitting. But everyone has on their little name card either a moon or a snake. And you both ended up with, well, that's not quite right. Miss Sand, you ended up with a moon. And Mr. Goodfellow, you ended up with a snake. Eventually, Theodora addresses the entire dinner, a couple of courses in. Everyone's got a little bit of wine in them. Candle, the warmth from the candles is making everyone kind of, just a kind of nice, warm, comfortable fug of alcohol and fire and food. And she says, I want to thank you all for joining us here at Brathwaite Hall this weekend. We have a great many activities for you all tomorrow. And, well, as you all know, I have committed my life to the betterment of Britain. Well, after my youthful adventures, of course. And there's a bit of laughter at that. But now I'm here, serving my queen in the only way I know how. And that actually leads to a bit of an announcement I have to make. We will have a special guest tomorrow for our little gathering. Our special guest is a woman you all know very well. Her address is Buckingham Palace. And there's a little excited chatter, kind of breaking out like, ooh. And there's some applause. She says, yes, we will be joined by Her Majesty tomorrow. And, well, we should save some surprises, I suppose. Now, you will notice that each of you has on your name card, on your place card, either a moon or a snake. If you have a snake, I would kindly invite you to join me in a salon for a special dessert. If your card has a moon, I would like for you to meet in the South Garden at midnight. where we shall have some, let's just say, bonus entertainments. And everyone's very intrigued by this, but, dinner is happening. Things are going and proceeding nicely. What is everyone doing during the dinner? Ms. Sand?
I think, aside from eating, because this is an elaborate and delicious meal, I think I, especially after this announcement, am looking for the other people with the moon. And specifically, I am concerned that the coven is here at this dinner and not wearing veils, and that the people with the moon are all members of the coven. And that is my fear.
It is an interesting thing to be concerned about. I will tell you just that no one from the coven is at the table. The one unifying quality of everybody at the table is they are the youngest and most beautiful of the guests who have been given the moon place card.
I see.
Mr. Goodfellow, you didn't get the pretty people invitation, unfortunately.
This is high school all over again.
Indeed.
When did Robin go to high school? Which century was that?
The dinner comes to, well, Mr. Goodfellow, what are you doing during the dinner?
Who is seated around me?
You are surrounded by several other serpent invitee, a couple of like very, very old dowagers, particularly blind and feeble man who did something in the Navy back in the day, who knows. Yes.
I think he tries to avoid making polite conversations, focuses on drinking.
You said you're going to avoid making polite conversation?
Yeah. I was like not along with their stories, and it's like, yeah, more wine.
I think one of the dowagers leans over to you and she says, "What do you suppose the name cards mean? What awaits us?"
Death and misery.
Oh, she sort of like chuckles. She's like, "Well, I've been ready to meet my maker for some time, but you look like you've got plenty of years left in you, young man."
You have no idea.
She says, "I hope you don't think I'm being too impertinent.
It's
But
Musk.
Oh. She leans back and she says, "Musk, like..."
A deer.
"Yes, well," and goes back to ignoring or minding her own business. Bernhardt, what are you doing during the dinner?
When the servants are just waiting on to be called upon, and whatnot, and I'm keeping an eye on Mr. Goodfellow and Miss Sand just in case they need me for something. I'm trying to make polite conversation with other servants, seeing all those name cards, because that's the only thing I'm really getting out of, besides having people go to the gardens versus the private salon with Lady Brathwaite.
You can make the information move with presence, I guess.
Eight. You are muted, Jason.
You're going to be aware of two very interesting things. One, you find some servants preparing silver-domed food dishes, but underneath the domes, there are documents, not food. Two, the little outbuilding where one of these encounters, either the snake or the moon, is going to happen, is currently being, well, it's a smell you recognize from the Christmas tree, which is what led you there. They're going to light that thing on fire. And a clue.
Mm-hmm.
The clue is I know what I want the clue to be, but I'm trying to think how to work it in. So we'll come back to that in a moment.
Mm-hmm.
But I do want to pick up with the dinner. Everything is kind of wrapping up. And Theodora says, now, those of you with a moon on your place card, please enjoy the next few hours however you wish. We have some very interesting things planned for you at midnight in the garden. For those of you who have a snake on your place card, please come with me for a special dessert. And she gets up, and all the frail, older, not as attractive people are getting up, plus you, Mr. Goodfellow, I guess. Are you heading there with them?
Grudgingly.
Indeed. And Ms. Sand, the serpents are all like kind of, well, guess we'll go play cards or go hang out, go have brandy. People are doing different things. What are you going to do, Ms. Sand?
I want to go open that sarcophagus.
Very interesting.
It is night now, but not yet midnight. Perfect time.
Indeed. You can find Burnright, probably, but Burnright, you can decide, are you going to go where Mr. Goodfellow's going, or are you going to hang back?
I'm going to go to the outer building that smells like the Christmas tree.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And that is where the dinner party is currently headed. Team Snake is headed to that building.
Is there any way could I get there first?
You can. She's going to be
Really?
like lying in wait.
No. I'm going to light it on fire before then.
Very interesting. You get to the outbuilding, and you are met by I know who it is. I need to pull up a document though, so I can get the info. Where is it at? Sorry, give me just one moment.
Mm-hmm.
You are met by a man in a tweed suit. He has very pale, oily flesh. And he's there at the door of this little outbuilding, and he says, "Good evening to you."
Good evening. Who might you be?
And he kind of turns and he says, "Are you going to be a thorn in my employer's side?" Do you know what happens to people who cross her? What if I told you I happen to people who cross her? And do you suppose I have a gun in my coat? And would you guess that I am a very good shot?
Honestly, I've been shot before, and it's not really that big of a deal, really. Uh, Problem is, do you like using that gun?
Is it really a question of whether I like using the gun, or is it a question of, do I like doing my duty?
Hmm. I suppose this is the question of whether it's, are you motivated by duty or are you motivated by something else? And I'm going to take out of my pocket. This is not a personal quarters item. I a lighter, and I'm just gonna start flicking it.
Hmm. The group is approaching the building. Mr. Goodfellow, you see Brathwaite talking to this man. And Theodora is at the head of the group. And she calls over to you. Brathwaite.
Mm.
What a perfectly ironic name, given the current circumstances. You have nothing to fear. Mr. Goodfellow will be very safe.
Really now?
Oh, yes.
I just figured that this is an escalation of what happened to our little Christmas party last time? Maybe I should return the favor. And I'm just tossing the lighter.
Very good. That is certainly a night move. What are you afraid is going to happen if you fail?
Well, since since the building's bigger than the Christmas tree, like I imagine that this is just going to explode rather than just a like series of flames.
Yeah, it's worse than that. I think that it will explode and rapidly it'll get you and burn you up.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead and roll with composure.
That is a 9.
You are going to succeed, but you're going to get some burns. And that will be you'll take it as a condition. But go ahead and describe the scene.
I think as I'm flicking, it's like I think the guy in the tweed suits, he keeps on eyeing it, but since like I'm not really doing too much of it, he really can't do anything to me because there's decorum to be held. But me just tossing it, like he tries to catch it, but it just is just out of reach, and like the building just goes poof, and like burns, and like imagine like he like jumps to the ground. I like get like a good flash flame as like I've tried to cover me, and like I think people are panicking because there's fire.
The clue was Theodora's intention to burn this group of people alive. You have disrupted her plan, but that is nevertheless the clue. So, Mr. Goodfellow, what are you doing in the meantime?
In the chaos of the explosion, can I make a beeline for Theodora and attempt to snap her neck?
Oh, very intriguing. Mechanically, you cannot, but I like it as a scene.
Of course.
Absolutely. I think as you rush towards her, you find your limbs quite suddenly seizing up. She is under the protection of the coven. And Theodora turns. And she says, "This is just a minor setback, Mr. Goodfellow. Everyone, it looks like we're having a bit of a hazard here." And there's people like kind of shaking and scared. She says, "I guess we all owe a great deal to Mr. Burnright for preventing us from going inside. I must apologize. These old houses, you know." And everyone's very unnerved and shaken, but going back into the house. And she whispers in your ear, "Mr. Goodfellow, I forgive you and your servant, Mr. Goodfellow. You can make up this hostile act to me by meeting at midnight in the South Garden."
Will you still be protected by your pets there?
Oh, yes. And once she leaves, you are able to move again. And the serpent group is herded back into the house. Meanwhile, Ms. Sand, you've paddled back out to the island. And as you step off the boat, members of the coven step out of the shadows to meet you. Our wayward sister, how very kind of you to be here, right where we need you.
That was always my flaw. I was never quite able to stop myself from coming when she called.
They lower their veils. They raise their hands. And they begin chanting. And we will leave that moment there as we go to Stars and Wishes. Whoever wants to go first, take it away.
I gotta give it a star for Brathwaite servants because I just love them every time. Even like when I get to use them in my own games, they're just so interesting. Like in terms of like characterization. Also, star for putting Mr. Goodfellow with the elderly in terms of like, oh yeah, we're gonna put all these people together. I'm like, oh, but this seems like to be like a sort of fun time with Brathwaite, and it turns like no, Brathwaite's just gonna murder all these people.
Yeah, Elmer was a lot of fun.
I like Elmer. He's one of my favorite side characters.
I really
in the
like
game.
the standoff between Burnright and Elmer. Like, yeah. Was
No,
that Elmer? Sorry.
no, that was I. Even though the name didn't get revealed, that was Mr. Higgins.
That's Mr. Higgins. Yeah.
I really liked that standoff of just like the two loyal servants, both with blood on their hands, staring each other down.
That
He's
was
fun
a cool
to role.
scene.
He's fun to role play because in the in the description, the way I wrote him, he only speaks in questions. so you have to like, it's always a role playing challenge to like always respond with a question. You know, even when he said good evening, it was like good evening. So, yeah. But anyway, star for me. I really like the. I like the kind of I really, well, I guess it's more of a wish, but I'm excited to see how, because you all as players will be kind of creating the ritual, right? Using the clues. And so it'll be kind of fun to see what you come up with, or I'll be kind of excited to see what you come up with. It'll be fun to see that. As a star though, I've been, you know, I always enjoy all the callbacks to the main campaign. That's the whole point of the Mastermind Threat. I thought the scene with Elmer and Mr. Goodfellow was very funny and very fun to play. And there's something about taking like a character who's like so demanding and accustomed to getting what they want all the time, kind of being put in this situation where they're being waited on by this person who's just so doddering and slow, like almost theatrically slow, you know, and then poisons you. So like, yeah, that was all just really good stuff. I'm intrigued by the island and what's going on over there, and the Crawleys. That's another wish. I want to know what the graveyard has to do with it, or if the Crawley family is, if there's a connection that to the ritual itself. I'd love to know what that is, because even if it doesn't end up being like an actual clue, it's still like context, right? It's still like a lowercase c clue, so it could be something if you wish it to be. But yeah, overall, just really good time, and I like Burnright kind of doing like the things servants would be doing and investigating in that way. I thought that was a good approach.
Yeah, I figured like it would at least give us like more room to act, because like I know like Mr. Goodfellow and Miss Sand, they wouldn't be allowed in these spaces, where me being in these spaces, even though like it looks a little weird, looks a little odd, it's not exactly too weird or too odd. Just like, because like I can get brushed aside and then just do my own thing, because once you are recognized as something, people have a tendency to just forget you.
I have a plan for my retirement, and I would say that is my biggest wish. But the issue is that the first one is, you know, the first mask that I want to mark is my last mask of the past. And since that's going to be a major dramatic moment, I wanted to wait until I was face to face with the Coven. And so I think that might be where I start.
That might be where we start next time. Yeah. I knew I wanted to get you like face to face with them, like at a certain point. So yeah, I'm happy we're doing that. Yeah, it's really good. Any other stars or wishes?
I just I'm excited for next time. I don't know how this ritual is going to play out, because this is just very interesting in terms of like what hectate is, and and what the clues involve. because like the snake motif is throwing me off a little bit. Not sure where that lies.
Well, the snake is the twin snakes are a symbol of Hecate, so that's part of it. Basically, kind of anything in twos or things at crossroads are all like Hecate things, right?
Okay.
Also rebirth, right? With the snake
Yeah.
shedding its skin.
Yeah, and the moon. The funny thing about Hecate as a sort of historically is like it's the Romans totally dismembered the Greek idea of Hecate and like mashed up a bunch of other gods to make their own kind of version of it, sort of, and then and Hecate sort of like fell out of favor in the Roman era, right? And so that was kind of where I got the idea of like a sort of cast off cult, you know, kind of moving to England and trying to like, you know, reestablish some power. And maybe Theodora Brathwaite and the Coven have sort of figured something out. And so I thought that was an interesting angle. But in some tellings, you know, like in the Greek versions, especially, like Hecate gets kind of like muddled up with Artemis and like Hestia and like, you know, like, so it's the vagueness of it is like really an interesting angle as well, you know. So
yeah, okay, that makes a lot more sense.
And this is maybe just a wish, but Hecate being undone by a poet and Goodfellow undoing a poet as like two of their foundational, so that opposition, I'm hoping maybe, yeah, it would be fun to see that.
that'd be kind of cool. Yeah. Well, you know, that's what answer questions for, so you can come up with that story as you wish. Any other stars or wishes?
Yeah, I guess for a wish, I really want to see, in addition to the climax of the threat, see this tension between Burnright and Goodfellow really come to some resolution.
Definitely.
I'll wish I want Mr. Goodfellow to spend the last 3 remaining like the marks of the reflection. Just because like I have a feeling like the whole Burnright Goodfellow thing will get resolved with that.
I can burn through those pretty fast.
All right then. If there's nothing else, a quick stinger scene. None of you are here. This is strictly out of character. But Team Serpent minus Mr. Goodfellow are all sitting in a room around a table. And Theodora says, I apologize for the disruption to the evening. I want to assure you all that the fire has been put out and it will not interfere with our fun this weekend. But I promised you all a little after dinner treat. And servants bring in these covered silver dishes. And they set them down, one in front of each of the guests. And they lift the domes, and it's pots of ink and quills and papers, documents. And everyone looks a little confused. And she says, before you are documents I've had my lawyers prepare, transferring your various assets. Mills, farms, land, to Brathwaite Hall. I would like very much for you all to sign these documents. Now. And they all just kind of laugh, like, what are you talking about? We're not going to do that. This is a joke. But then they each find their hands trembling and reaching for the quills. And they have looks of shock and horror in their faces as they lift the quills, dripping ink, and put quill to paper and begin signing papers. And the servants move the papers aside so each can be signed. And Theodora just watches. And some of them are even complaining in the middle of this, even though they can't stop their actions. They're like, what are you doing? What is this? What's happening? I don't know what sort of foul sorcery this is, but this is not legally binding. And she says, well, only if you're around to tell people what happened here tonight. And they all get like looks of terror in their face. And when the signing of documents is done, they each raise a quill and jam it repeatedly into their own necks. Blood and ink mixing and spraying all over the place. The servants rapidly grabbing the documents so as not to spoil them. And when they're all laying there quite dead at the table, she says, there's just one more piece of property I need to get my hands on. And we will wrap up there. I will see you all next week for the conclusion.